Good morning and welcome to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. I am located at 1563 Main Street in Peckville, Pennsylvania, and I am right here on this station every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. to bring you, the Pennsylvania landowner, the information that you need regarding oil and gas development here in Pennsylvania. And as I hope you know, I, Attorney Doug Clark, represent Pennsylvania landowners and Pennsylvania oil and gas right owners. Have not, do not, and will not represent gas or pipeline companies. Never have, never will. I represent Pennsylvania landowners for such items as gas lease amendments, modifications, extensions, renewals, pipeline right-of-way agreements. If you don't have a lawyer for a pipeline right-of-way agreement, and the same applies with all of these, but I'm telling you, you're making a major mistake. And again, whether it's me or somebody else, get a lawyer who knows and understands these pipeline agreements, who understands how to assess your leverage as a landowner, who understands your rights to say, thank you for the offer, but no, thank you, I'm not interested. Or, which is many times the case, thank you for the offer, but your $5, your $10, your $15 per foot compensation is just not going to cut it. Because I know of people signing for $30, $60 a foot, sometimes $100+ a foot. So I'm sure as heck not going to agree to a pipeline at $15, $10, or God forbid, $5 a foot. Not going to do it. So if you want to pay a more reasonable price, then hey, let's talk about it. So in other words, hey, I'm not interested in this pipeline at this price level, but if you'd like to negotiate, you'd like to talk some other prices, well, then let's go ahead and do that. I can't tell you how many times I have clients where the pipeline right-of-way offer starts at, say, and again, this is just illustration, say starts at $20,000 for the project, ends at $50,000, sometimes ends at $100,000, sometimes doesn't move forward in the higher compensation and then ends up dying. But look, I say this quite often. I haven't said it in a while, but let me tell you, there are so many worse things for a landowner. There are so many worse things you as a landowner can do, so many worse things than electing not to sign a bad agreement. What do I mean by that? Look, it's simple stuff, but we get caught in the trap sometimes. What do I mean? You're presented a terrible agreement, whether it be a terrible lease agreement, which I've talked about some recently. We're talking, as an example, in my opinion, 10 years, 12.5% full deductions, or a pipeline agreement that's offering $15, $10, or gosh forbid, again, $5 a foot. But any of those, you may say, hey, look, that's a really bad agreement. So I'm going to elect to pass on that agreement. So what have you done? You've elected not to enter into a bad agreement. That's a good decision. Why would you want to enter into a bad agreement versus entering into a good agreement, a fair agreement, a reasonable agreement? Don't feel just because you have an agreement presented to you or an offer presented that you have to take it. Don't fall into the narrative that we know that we've seen dating back to 2006, 7, 8. Don't fall into the trap of hurry up and sign this because we're gonna make you rich. Just ask how many thousands upon thousands of people have had that experience and have looked back and say, geez, didn't quite go as what I was told. So again, as always, not specific advice for anybody, but gosh, we got to make sure that we stop signing bad agreements. And what happens is when people stop signing really bad agreements, they're saying, you know what? No, I'm not going to sign it, for example, a 10-year lease. No, I'm not going to sign a pipeline right away for $10 a foot. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I don't feel that that's a fair agreement. Well, what's going to happen? Well, once people start doing that, you're going to find, in my experience, look, I suppose you're going to find, and I believe in this wholeheartedly, you're going to find offers improve and offers get better. And I've seen it across the state, and I've seen it in all areas. So, but the point is, you got to make sure that you're looking at this agreement or whatever is being offered, but you got to make sure that you understand that, hey, why am I doing this? And once again, it's not advice for any particular person who's listening, but it's advice in general of ask some questions. Get some assistance by somebody working for you who understands the industry, who understands the market, who understands the historical development of not only the oil and gas in Pennsylvania, but understands the historical development of offers, whether it be leases, pipelines, surface agreements, and what your rights are. You got to understand those things, because if you don't, it leads directly to landowners signing agreements that are extremely beneficial to the company, not so great for the landowner. So you got to make sure that we're asking the right questions and that we're getting the right answers. You got to ask the questions to somebody who's working for you, who's knowledgeable, who can answer your questions and help you. Unfortunately, we just have too many people still falling into this narrative of hurry up and sign and you're going to make a whole bunch of money. You got we got to learn from that. We have to learn from that. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. I'm right here with you on this station every Sunday, 8 to 9 a.m. And I want to remind everybody also, if you can't join us each week for the show, you can go check out pagasleaseattorney.com. You check it out, use it as a resource. Whether you ever communicate with us, go to pagasleaseattorney.com. Read the site, peruse around there. Listen to prior radio shows. I've been doing All Things Marcellus since 2010. Doing the weekly radio show, All Things Marcellus, since 2010. Go search old shows, find some information that you're interested in, and become educated. Education is the key. Information from the landowner's perspective, not from the gas company's perspective, is the key to enter into better agreements, protect your property, maximize financial opportunities, not just for today, tomorrow, next year, but for the next 50, maybe 100, or even longer periods of time. So we got to make sure we're doing that. So, okay, I'm going to switch gears here, and I'm going to talk about, I'm going to try to stay calm on this one. I'm going to try. So, okay. Every week, things come up. Every week, things come up in dealing with landowners in Pennsylvania that I have a master list to write radio show ideas. I am not exaggerating. It's 3 pages long of ideas for radio shows. So it's always a struggle. I want to talk about pipelines so much because it's just such an important issue. But I don't think I'm going to get into pipelines so much today, but I am going to say, I want to talk about, again, now hear me out, so don't leave me on this one, but buying and selling oil and gas rights. That's the broad forest picture here, but into the trees, the story is really the type of contracts that are presented to you, the landowner, the oil and gas right owner. You're presented with, whether it be an offer to lease, an offer for a pipeline right-of-way agreement, a surface use agreement, a storage agreement, a roadway agreement, a proposed agreement to buy your oil and gas rights, whatever that may be, presented with an agreement. So we want to look at that agreement. And my point of this kind of story that we're going to get into here is how unbelievably, and I mean, I wouldn't believe it. I am not I would not believe it until I read it. And I said, you've got to be kidding me, that there are literally people out there who are presenting this type of paperwork to Pennsylvania landowners. And as bad as that is, there are some people that are signing it. And if there's one human being that signs this type of an agreement, that's a travesty in my mind, because it's unbelievably horrible. And in my opinion, it's praying. You're praying I'm talking about not praying to God, but preying like a predator upon the landowner and oil and gas right owner. It's predatory, in my opinion. And we have people signing these documents at their kitchen tables, not having really, truly any idea what they're signing, other than they have an idea what they think they're signing, but what they are signing isn't what they think they're signing. It's amazing to me. So we got to stop signing agreements just whenever they come and they present it to you. Put your pen down, please. As I say, stop signing bad agreements. But put your pen down when you're talking about selling your gas rights, entering into pipeline right-of-way agreements that are going to be there forever in most cases. They'll have an easement there forever in many will say, cases. You're talking about a lease. We're talking about these documents that are going to impact you, your property, your children, and most likely your grandchildren into the future. Well, you better sign a good agreement. All right, so I'm going to take this break here now, and I'm going to really get into this example of the type of documentation that's presented to landowners that people are signing. And whether it be a gas lease written a certain way, whether it be a pipeline agreement, a surface agreement, a roadway agreement, always be careful about roadway agreements. Please be careful. I've talked about it before. Not going to talk about it today. But gosh, be careful about roadway agreements. Another area where I see people making disastrous decisions, in my opinion. But whatever it is, this gives you an idea. So you say, well, I'm not going to ever sell my gas rights. Good. Well, in most cases, good for you. Good. Not generally for it, though I do believe in some cases it makes sense. But when we're talking about this, just because we're talking about selling gas rights, don't say, well, I'm not going to sell gas rights. Let me tune out. And I'm not saying this because, boy, I need to have another listener. I'm saying this because this gives you some bigger, broader perspective of how companies operate, how aggressive companies can be, how aggressive they can be in making offers to you, the landowner. And what I mean aggressive is, say there's this line in a contract or line in a negotiation where everything is, say, 100% completely fair, that each side got the perfectly fair agreement. Nothing too one-sided towards you, the landowner, nothing too one-sided towards the company. These agreements, though, if that balance is 50-50, say, in the middle, these things are 99 to the company, 1% to the landowner. You can't sign those agreements. And the point is, and I know this, that if anybody presented with one of these types of agreements, spoke to a lawyer, spoke to me, spoke to somebody that knows what they're doing, not anyone, not a single person would sign this proposal, but people are signing it. Why are they signing it? Because they're just taking hook, line, and sinker what they're being told, and they don't understand these very complicated legal documents. And I want to again say, I am by no means an obstructionist in this process. My clients sign leases, pipeline agreements, storage use agreements, you name it, surface site, compressor station agreement. Like, my clients sign agreements, but my clients sign good agreements. We don't just sign an agreement, my clients don't, just because it's presented to them. They don't sign agreements without understanding the agreement. I mean, who would? Why would you ever do that? So it's not about, don't sign, don't sign, don't sign. It's about, let's assess the offer, decide if it's right for you, and let's talk about what your options are and how you handle this going forward. That's what we do. And in most cases, I end up having a client who signs an agreement in most cases. But when the agreement's bad and it's not fair and it's not appropriate and it's not right for them, well, my clients don't sign. And we're usually able to identify that within the first hour or two of representation. Okay, you're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. We're going to talk about how one-sided these agreements can be when I get back after this break. Remember, I'm here with you right here on this station every Sunday, 8 to 9 a.m., and I'll be right back after this super important message. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Again, I'm here with you on this station every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. to bring you the information that you need as the landowner for oil and gas development here in Pennsylvania. So, okay, I'm going to talk about an offer. Now, as I say, let me give you a little background. I'm generally, but again, never specific advice for anyone, but I'm generally against selling oil and gas rights in almost all cases, but that's an individual decision. An individual decision that needs to be made fully informed. You need to be fully informed, especially in this type of market. People are making, in my opinion, extremely poor decisions in selling oil and gas rights, not only at rates that are way below what the price should be if you elect to sell the gas rights. But as bad as that is, and gosh, boy, that is bad. That's really bad when you're selling your gas rights maybe at a half or a quarter the value that they're worth. That's really, really bad because when you sell these, they're gone forever. It amazes me too. Some people don't realize that when you're selling your gas rights, you sold your gas rights. Somebody else owns them then. And you're never going to get another royalty. You're never going to get another payment. And if you live on the property, well, you could end up seeing development, well pad, access road. You could see a lot on the property, and you would never get a dime of royalty for anything. So just remember that, but that's just a small point. A very large point, but in this whole process, which tells you something, that's a small point. So people are signing documents or signing these agreements to sell gas rights, oil and gas rights. They're signing them, and not only are they signing many people for far less compensation than what they should be getting. Oh boy. So, we reached out. I had somebody recently going to sell gas rights. I communicated with a bunch of different companies, and you'd be shocked at the disparity in the numbers that were offered, like on a per acre. So if in one case, the offer was literally just under half of the highest offer. So there you are, you get a letter or you communicate with these guys. They say, we want to give you, let's say, $2,500 an acre for your gas rights to buy them. You say, that sounds good, which I'm scratching my head there. But you say, okay, that sounds good. That's what I want to do. And you go ahead and sign a contract. Well, had you reached out to some other companies and had you done some research, you might find that there may be other companies or even individuals or somebody, something, some entity out there that's probably not a thing, but some entity that would pay you more. So you certainly don't want to sell your gas rights for $2,500 an acre when another company is willing to offer you $5,000 an acre. So just that simple. If you are getting a right or an offer to buy your gas rights and you think, that's a good offer. Well, the first thing you should be doing is, first off, put your pen down. Second thing you should be doing is saying, well, geez, if this company's offering me $2,500 or if this company is offering me $5,000 an acre for my gas rights, well, maybe there's other companies that are willing to offer me more. And if you can go from, say, $5,000 to $6,000 per acre and you have 100 acres, well, you increased your price by $1,000 per acre at 100 acres. 1,000 times 100 acres equals $100,000. So you just made $100,000 more by doing a little research. If you were offered $2,500 an acre by the company that walked into your door or sent you the letter, and you do a little research and you're able to communicate with some other companies and you're able to get $5,000 an acre, well, you just raised your price by $2,500 an acre. If you have 100 acres, you just made an extra $250,000 by doing some due diligence, some research, and you've made sure that you've maximized the compensation that you would receive. You have to do that, in my opinion. Who in the world would say, oh, okay, this company's offering me this amount of money, let me just go ahead and sign? What if another company will offer you double? Or again, even $1,000 more an acre, or even $50 $500 more per acre. And if you had 100 acres, there's an extra $50,000. You have to be doing this. You have to be researching. You have to maximize the offer. So whenever I have a client who wants to sell the gas rights, we want to make sure first that they understand what they're doing, that they weigh the pros and cons of this decision, give them the best information to make the decision themselves. The attorney doesn't make the decision for you. I don't make the decision for my clients. They make the decision. I provide them the information that they need to make the decision that's right for them. And sometimes I may disagree with that decision, but that's not my call. I may make recommendations. I may even tell my client, hey, look, you know what? I don't like this, but it's your decision to make. You can do it, and if you're going to do it, we're going to do it the best way we can. So if you're going to go ahead, you're going to sell your gas rights, well, what are we going to do? Again, make sure that you understand everything, the pros and cons, but we're also going to make sure two extremely important things. We're going to make sure that you get the most money possible, and it can be significantly different than what you're currently offered. Then here it comes. We want to look at the agreement of sale for the gas rights. And I'm going to tell you this, we're going to want to change the language because of all, and this is a real tough statement to make because others are close, but of all the agreements that are out there presented that are so unbelievably company friendly, I think that the worst ones that I see, the worst offenders of presenting landowners with unbelievably company-friendly agreements, and please don't think that the other companies aren't doing it as well with leases and pipelines, but these agreements to sell your oil and gas rights, boy, most of them are complete head scratchers. It's just amazing. It's, to me personally, there's a part of it out there. There's some real legitimate stuff. And I think some of it is really good for people. But boy, there's some out there that, in my opinion, borderlines on rackets and scams, in my opinion. I always got to say that, my opinion. That's my opinion, but I believe that opinion, which I certainly should, since it is my opinion. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark at the Clark Law Firm. Remember, I'm here with you every Sunday, 8 to 9 a.m. on this station to bring you, the landowner, the information that you need regarding natural gas development. So, okay, here, let's talk about some terms. Oh, there's so many here. There's so many in this document. But I'm going to tell you this. Let me, just this first term that I'm going to talk about, in and of itself, to me, is entirely disqualifying. But there are many terms in this agreement that are entirely disqualifying. But I'm going to paraphrase from this agreement. So this is an agreement. Let me play this scenario out. Have this illustration in your mind. You get a letter or you get a knock on your door where lady comes, says, hey, I'm working for such and such a company, and we're looking to acquire your oil and gas rights. Yeah, as you can see, the market's really down. We're looking to do you a big favor. We're really nice. We just want to blow money. We just want to give you money, and we're going to lose, but we just want to give you money because we're really nice guys. And if you don't take the money, you're pretty crazy because we're giving away free money. I don't even know why we're doing this. Well, remember I taught the other day that many of these people are simply brokers, middlemen, looking to get your name on paper and then market it to other companies and make a profit based upon the difference of what they sign you at versus what they're able to get another company to pay for your oil and gas rights. So real quick on this. So let's go back to my example where I said, say you get an offer of $2,500. You say, oh, per acre. Oh, that sounds great. That sounds great. I need the money here. Where do I sign? So you sign it. Or remember, say you got that offer and you were smart, and I'll say this, give me a call and we talk about, okay, here's what it is. Here's what your options are. Why are you thinking this way? Are you thinking about this? And ultimately you say, hey, you know what? I need to sell these rights. I'm going to do it. So then we say, okay, well, let's make sure, you got $2,500 offer, but let's see if there's any other offers out there. And say we find an offer for $5,000 for your rights. That's not unheard of, guys. That's not unheard of. Let me tell you, I, as a lawyer, I don't work on commission or anything like that. We're reaching out. We want to make sure that you as a client are doing as well as you can if you're going to be selling your oil and gas rights. But say you sign for $2,500, that person that you sign with then goes out and shops this agreement for sale to other companies, hedge funds, investors who want to buy oil and gas rights. So they sign you at $2,500 an acre, and then say they sell your gas rights or the agreement, that document that commits you to sell your gas rights. That broker then takes that, says, hey, company X, look, I have this 100 acres of gas rights under contract. I'd like to see if you're interested in buying it. And he says, what would you pay? And because does this with a bunch of companies, and say company X says, well, I'll pay $5,000 an acre. Well, that land guy, that initial entity who came to you and signed you up at $2,500 an acre has now flipped your rights to another company at double the price. They're probably going to make quite a bit of money on that transaction. Quite a bit. You're not. You're stuck in there. We need to prevent that. People, these brokers, these middlemen should not, in my opinion, be making massive sums of money off of landowners who are uninformed. That's a problem, in my opinion. It's a major problem. So we got to defend against this. So if you're thinking about selling your gas rights, you need to make sure that you're going to sell them for the highest possible compensation. When I get back, I am going to talk about some of the language. We're talking about compensation. The language is unbelievable in some of these agreements. But I'm going to try to convince you to believe me, because I'm not making it up. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. I'm here with you every Sunday on this station from 8 to 9 a.m., and I'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. I'm here with you every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. right here on this station. So, okay, let's talk about some of this language. And again, my point overall is, look, this is an example, in my opinion, of a horrific agreement for you, the landowner. Just absolutely terrible. I'm going to leave compensation go. We're going to talk about the language of the agreement. This is one example. But some of these pipeline agreements, gas leases, they're similar in how one-sided they are. And you have to understand that. Companies know that some people will sign anything. So they prey on those people who will sign anything. Again, my disclaimer, that's my opinion. But we know, people see, so you make your own decisions. You make your own judgments. But that's my experience. You got to stop doing that. We have to stop signing these terrible, terrible agreements. So let me give you this example. So here is this person. They think, I'm going to use some hypotheticals here. They think, okay, hey, I'm going to sell my gas rights. Let's say, easy numbers, for $5,000 per acre. That's what I'm going to sell my gas rights for. So a guy comes out, says, hey, we want to do this, $5,000 an acre. You have 100 acres. We're going to give you $500,000. Everything is going to be wonderful. You're going to get this. We have 30 or 60 days, whatever they say. You're going to get this money. Everything's going to be fantastic. Landowner says, hey, $500,000 sounds pretty good. haven't received royalties, and gas market, who knows what's going to happen, and what the heck, give me $500,000. Sounds great. That's going to change my life, and whatever happens from there happens from there. So that's the way that some people think. The question is what you're signing, is that going to result in exactly what you think it is going to result in? And what you think for most people is, hey, I sign this document, in the next 30 or 60 days, I am going to get a check for $500,000. End of story. You then own my oil and gas rights. I have $500,000 and transaction is complete. And for some people, understandably, that is a perfect transaction. And for clients of mine who elect to sell their oil and gas rights, again, we have initial review, consultation, talk about what the offer is, talk about trying to get some alternative offers to make sure you're maximizing the price you're going to receive. So we do that, and then we say, okay, let's look too at the language that's presented in these agreements. And again, please be careful with these agreements. So here's an example, hypothetical. Well, I'm going to paraphrase and give some just generalities to give you an idea here. So one question is, all right, well, if you sign an agreement to sell your gas rights, when does the buyer, the person or company that's going to buy your gas rights, when do they actually own the gas rights? And what do I mean by that? Let's say you've been receiving royalties now for 5 years, and you're disappointed because they're not what you thought they were going to be. Surprisingly, all those promises of millions of dollars haven't quite gone the way that you were told they were going to, so you're frustrated. But remember, you always need to remember that we're in a real low gas price situation. We don't have a lot of development. We have pipeline bottlenecks, so maybe you need to be a little patient, but that's a discussion for another day. So you say, hey, I want to go ahead, I want to sell these gas rights. But remember, you've been receiving royalties for 5 years. So here's an example of so the question is, well, when does the buyer start getting their share of royalties? So let me explain again. Let's make this simple. Say you're getting $1,000 every month. And of course, that's not going to be exactly how it occurs, but let's pretend. You're getting $1,000 every single month for 5 years. That's what your royalty payment has been. So the question is, when you sell these rights to this company, we'll keep using our example, 100 acres, and we'll say they're going to buy them for $5,000 an acre, so that's $500,000. So when you're going to sell your gas rights to this company for $500,000, there's a big question. You've been getting royalties for 5 years. When does the company start receiving the royalties instead of you? You've been receiving them for 5 years. You're going to sell to a company. Well, my experience in almost every landowner that I speak to who's interested in selling the gas rights believes that the company who's buying the gas rights, or the person or the investor group, whatever it may be, that they would start receiving the royalties, the company, the buyer, once the landowner was paid their money. So here's my example. You're getting $1,000 every month. Say you're coming into January 1st, the sale occurs to the buyer gas company. So you say, okay, royalty payments starting in January will now be paid to the company, and I'll no longer receive royalty payments. That's what most landowners think. However, unfortunately, that's not typically the case. Not typically the case. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. So what is the case? Well, in many cases, most of the agreements that I see, that when you sign the agreement to sell your gas rights, you enter into an agreement for sale. Say you entered into it on September 1st. But the sale is finalized on January 1st. Most agreements for sale of gas rights that I see, and I see a decent amount of them, most of them say that as of the date that you sign the agreement for sale, that's the date that the company starts to have the right to receive your future royalties on the date that you sign the agreement. So, from September 1st when you sign the agreement, that moment, if the agreement is ultimately finalized and you're paid and the deed is filed, that's the time that the company or the buyer who's buying your gas rights starts having the ownership to receive the royalties starting September 1st, not January 1st when the sale is finalized. So if you're receiving $1,000 in royalties every month, so $1,000 in September, $1,000 in October, November, and December, you have 4 months, you're getting those royalties because the gas company doesn't know that you've signed an agreement for sale. And even if they did, they're not going to pay the other party until there is a deed recorded at the recorder's office showing that this other company has bought your gas rights. So that $4,000 that you get for September, October, November, and December, that's not your money. That has to go. It's going to end up, you're going to have to send that, write a check to the buyer, because on the day you sign the sales agreement, in most cases, you give up the royalties that you may receive from that day going forward if the agreement is finalized. So most people don't understand that. I gave an example. Say you're getting $1,000 a month. Say you were getting $2,000 a month. And so there, if you have 4 months, now you just lost $8,000 that you thought was yours. So you better darn well know when is we'll call it the effective date. When is the date that the ownership interest in these gas rights, or you may want to look at it as, when's the date that the royalties are transferred to the buyer? Usually, I stress usually, got to look at the contract. Usually it's going to be the day in which you sign the agreement for sale. And so sometimes that agreement for sale could sit out there for 6 months or longer. So now you're sitting there, you might even be getting royalties 6 months, 8 months, but they're not yours. They're the buyers, assuming the deed is ultimately finalized. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. So, okay, but how about this? How about, can it get worse? Well, it appears that it can. It appears that it can. So I'm reviewing an agreement, and I just literally, I'm shocked, shocked. Define gambling. No, shocked, where I'm reading this and it says that the agreement, like imagine this situation, that when you sign an agreement for sale, well, I just said, when you sign it, the rights now automatically become the gas company, or I'm sorry, the buyer. And so if you're getting royalties from the time the agreement of sale is signed until the time the closing occurs, that money belongs to the buyer. But how about this? How about that maybe the agreement of sale that's presented to you, maybe it says that when you sign it, it becomes effective either when you sign, if there's no oil and gas production, or maybe when you sign it, it becomes effective at the date of first production, at the time a well was drilled. Okay, what does that mean? Maybe, watch out for this. This could be devastating to you. Maybe when you sign the agreement for sale, maybe that language in that contract says that if you've been receiving royalties for 5 years, this agreement dates back to the time when you first started receiving royalties. So for 5 years, you're getting $1,000 a month. That's $12,000 a year. 5 times 12,000, $60,000. Well, maybe you owe the buyer $60,000. Boy, you better be careful. You better watch out for that. You have to watch out for that. Thank gosh we don't see this very often, but you have to watch out. That is devastating. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. I'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Remember, we're talking here about a sample agreement or terms where landowners are presented offers to buy oil and gas rights. But remember, it's also a lesson in the type of agreements that landowners are presented by companies in the energy industry in Pennsylvania. So although we're talking about oil and gas right agreements, the sell oil and gas rights, right now we're talking about that, the same ideas and principles apply to gas lease offers, pipeline agreements, roadway agreements, surface sites, etc. The point is, you have to watch out. This is a great illustration of how one-sided an agreement can be. So I'm giving you this example of, imagine this. You go to sell your oil and gas rights, and you find out, well, you think, okay, my example, 100 acres, you're going to sell at $5,000 an acre for $500,000. So you say, okay, great. They're telling me in 60 days, say I'll have my $500,000. They'll own my gas rights. I'm excited. I think that's a good deal for me, the landowner. However, first we got to make sure that you might have been able to sell them for thousands of dollars of an increase in compensation per acre. And we want to make sure you're not getting shortchanged, because if you could have sold them for $10,000 an acre, you just would have made another $500,000. So we got to make sure you're not selling it short on money, but then we have to check the language. Again, my example that for the last 5 years, say you were getting $1,000 a month in royalties. So in 5 years, you've accumulated $60,000 in royalties. Well, how about if your agreement says that the effective date, or when this starts, or it says when does the buyer start taking ownership of your royalty interest? When does the buyer start taking ownership or start receiving, in this hypothetical, the $1,000 per month in royalty? When does that occur? Well, most people think it occurs once you get paid your money for the transaction. The $500,000, you receive it. Now the other buyer starts to receive the royalty money. Well, in most cases, that's absolutely not the case. If you're lucky, probably, the transfer of ownership would take place when you actually sign the agreement to sell the gas rights to the company. So if you sign the agreement and then 6 months later you actually close, you get your money, well, during that 6-month period after you signed the agreement, although the royalties would still be paid to you, they belong to the purchaser, the buyer. So you would have to send that person or that buyer, that company, the $6,000, or they would deduct or subtract that $6,000 from the price they're going to pay you to buy these oil and gas rights. But how about an agreement that says, well, this agreement becomes effective as the date when you first started receiving royalties? Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that you started receiving royalties in this example 5 years ago. So that means in 5 years, all the royalties that you've received, once this transaction is completed, those royalties belong to the buyer. So what does that mean? Okay, let's do our example again. So you have 5 years of royalties, and I'm being very kind at saying $1,000 per month. And so we're saying in 5 years you've accumulated $60,000 in royalties. Well, what if your agreement says that whenever you sign the sales agreement, that the buyer of your oil and gas rights doesn't take over when they give you the check for the oil and gas rights they're buying? No, they become the owner of the gas rights from the first day that you've received royalties. Meaning that if you've received $60,000 of royalties, that buyer of your gas rights is going to reduce the purchase price by $60,000. So you think you're going to get $500,000, but in reality, you're going to get $440,000, because the company is going to deduct $60,000 from the price they pay you, because you signed a sales agreement that said that they own the oil and gas rights from the time that you first started receiving royalties. Please don't sign that type of an agreement. Please don't sign that type of an agreement. Let's do it this way. Let's say that for the 5 years, let's say that you've actually received $100,000 in royalty payments. Now the company's going to subtract $100,000 from the price they were going to pay you, because they say, hey, you signed a sales agreement that said I, as the buyer, am entitled to all the royalties you've received from the beginning of time. from the beginning of time. Imagine if you received $250,000 in royalties. Well, that $250,000 is going to be deducted from the price that the company is offering to pay you. You can't do that, guys. If you're going to sell your oil and gas rights, that transaction, that sale, the time when the buyer is entitled to your royalty money should be on the date that you get paid, not the date you sign the sales agreement, and gosh darn, not from the time when you first started receiving royalties. Imagine your shock when you're expecting a $500,000 check and you only receive a $400,000 check, and you say, "What in the world is that? What? Wait! Our deal's for $500,000." Company says, "Well, no, your deal is for $500,000 minus any royalties you've ever received under this lease." You say, "Well, I didn't know that. That doesn't make sense." They say, "Well, look, right here it is." They hold up the contract, black and white. You had an opportunity to talk to a lawyer. Don't know if you did or you didn't. If you had the opportunity. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. And how do we know you have an opportunity to speak with the lawyer? Well, we're not stupid, are you, company? Here's the language that, hey, every party to this agreement had the benefit, opportunity, independent legal counsel, that they had the ability to consult their counsel, and that, hey, this agreement should not be construed against me, the company, because you, the landowner, could have went and talked to an attorney, or you did. They write these things in there. Flags should be flying up all around you to say, wait, what in the world am I doing here? So, yeah, you signed a contract, and that's what's going to prevail. That's what's going to prevail. So let me say, this is just one of these terms. This is just one term that I'm saying is disqualified. Let's talk about, and there are, in this particular agreement, it's shocking. It's mind-blowing how many ways this company has written in ability to back out of the agreement at essentially no cost whatsoever to them. How they've written it that they virtually offer essentially almost nothing up front. Hundreds of dollars, or maybe even tens of dollars. That's all they're putting on the table, and having the ability to back out and having a lot of flexibility to back out. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. I talk to too many people that call after signing these agreements to say, well, they promised me my check in 30 or 60 days. But here I am 6 months out, and I have nothing. I have nothing. We got to stop this, guys. We have to stop this. So, how do we stop it? All right. Well, let me go one more step. So, okay. Remember, most people have a mortgage. Most, not all, but many people have a mortgage on the property. If you're going to sell your oil and gas rights, I'll say it again, pull out your mortgage agreement, because you're probably violating your agreement by selling your oil and gas rights, because they're part of the collateral that underlies your loan or your mortgage. So when the bank says, hey, we gave you a loan based upon you owning the whole property, and owning the whole property included the oil and gas rights. You cannot sell your oil and gas rights unless you get our permission. You better darn well look at that agreement. You have to. And people aren't doing it, and then all of a sudden they're finding out they got a major problem. So, okay, let's look at these documents, these sales agreements. They all have language somewhat like this. Again, some are far more overreaching than others, but saying essentially that if you have a mortgage, that the company can simply decline the purchase, so again, their way out, or they could go and seek to get the bank to release the mortgage or to change it. And in this amazing case, they're going to charge you the cost to do that, whether they're successful or not. Again, remarkable. Then goes on to say that if they can't get the bank to agree to release your mortgage, if they can't do that, well, then they can pay all or part of the money that they promised to you to pay off your mortgage. think about that. The company, you think you're getting a check. Say you think you're getting a check for $100,000. Say you have a mortgage for $150,000, and the company says, "Nah, we're going to put that $100,000 towards your mortgage." That may not be what you want. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. But that may not be what you want. You need to watch out for that. This agreement too has the seller, meaning you, the landowner, paying for the realty transfer tax. Paying for the tax. No. We don't do that. Maybe we share, but we don't pay for it. I mean, these things have thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of loopholes built all through them. And in fact, some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars of loopholes, depending upon the acreage and the value of the property. Here's a little phrase to watch out for. Watch out for a phrase like in the buyer's sole discretion, in the buyer's sole judgment. Those type of phrases mean, hey, buyer can get out at pretty much any reason whatsoever because it's their sole judgment, their sole decision. They can pick any reason in the world and bail out of this. We got to stop. My clients who elect to do this, we sign fair sales agreements, ones that you know. And surely I will never, I can't imagine ever representing a client who's going to sign an agreement to sell their gas rights that dates back to the time when they first received oil and gas royalties. Can't imagine it. And you know what? How does that occur? Well, I have a theory, my own theory. I think it occurs because people are relying on the person at their kitchen table who does not work for them, but works for, in this case, the company seeking to buy your oil and gas rights. They're certainly not there to protect you or to give you the best deal. They're there to get the best possible deal they can. The best possible deal they can and take advantage of anything they can. We have to stop this. I could talk about this agreement for so long, for literally days, because there's all these ways that they have written in here that, well, if this occurs, then we can reduce the price of the purchase, say, by 20% or 40% or whatever that number is, depending upon what the contingency is. Guys, it's not that simple. It's not. Think about it. Guy comes to your house, says, "Oh yeah, here, sign this. In 60 days, we'll give you $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. Here you go." How many times has that happened in your life? So just think about that. Is it, maybe things aren't as good as what they may sound, so you have to protect yourself. So how do you protect yourself? Commercial alert. And I say this because this is the way you can protect yourself. And whether it be a gas lease offer, a pipeline offer, a compressor, surface site roadway, whatever the offer is, offer to buy and sell oil and gas rights, or offer to sell your oil and gas rights. You can call my office. Here's the commercial. But it's because it's going to protect you. We do, and I represent landowners, oil and gas right owners who have gas rights in Pennsylvania, but live all across Pennsylvania, all across the country, representing people from all over the place. We can do these by telephone. We can do them in office. Everybody is welcome to come to the office and have a review and consultation of the offer presented. Usually, in most cases, it's an hour or 2 hours tops to do the review and consultation, to understand your rights to say no, your rights to negotiate, how you may approach other companies to try to increase the offer. What loopholes are in the documents presented? What loopholes are so big that you can drive a rocket ship through? A whale could swim through? What loopholes that are much smaller and hidden that you need to understand and know about? That's what we're going to need to be looking at. So if you're presented with a lease, pipeline, offer to buy your gas rights, give us a call, find out about these reviews and consultations, and I am very confident we can help you, and it will be well worth the time and the effort. Call us 570-307-0702. 570-307-0702. All right, that's it for the day. And as always, remember, stop signing bad agreements. Get information, get education. Stop signing bad agreements. And remember, the landman works for the company, not you, the landowner. Have a great week, everyone.